He doesn't love Yahweh used to believe that love announced itself loudly. I thought it arrived with certainty, with fireworks, with words that erased all doubt. I believed love knocked on the door and waited patiently until you opened it. I didn't. Know then that love can also be quiet, confusing, and cruel, not because it hurts you on purpose, but because it never truly shows up. This is the story of how I learned the truth. I met him on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day that feels like a blank page. The sky was pale, undecided between rain and sun, and I remember thinking how fitting that was. Nothing dramatic happened, no lightning struck, no music played. He simply appeared, smiled, and asked me a question I don't even remember now. What I remember is how seen I felt in that moment. At first, everything seemed simple. He listened when I spoke, laughed at my jokes, and looked at me as if I mattered. When he touched my hand, it felt deliberate, meaningful. I told myself, this is how it starts. I told myself not to overthink, not to rush, not to imagine a future before the present had time to breathe. But imagination is stubborn. Hope is louder than reason. We talked every day, sometimes for hours, about nothing, about everything: dreams, fears, childhood memories. He told me things he said he had never told anyone else. I wore those confessions like medals, proof that I was special, chosen. I began to build a version of him in my mind, a man who cared deeply, but expressed it quietly. A man who loved in subtle ways. That was my first mistake, because subtle love and absent love can look dangerously similar. There were signs, of course, there always are. I just didn't want to see them. He rarely made plans. When he did, they were vague, flexible, easy to cancel. If I asked where we were going, he'd say, let's see how it feels. If I asked what we were, he'd smile and say, why label something that's good? At first, I admired his freedom. I told myself I was modern, independent, not like people who needed definitions to feel secure. I told myself love didn't need rules. But late at night, when my phone stayed silent, doubt crept in. I watched the screen, wondering if I should text first. Again, I measured my words carefully, afraid of sounding needy, afraid of pushing him away. Love shouldn't make you feel like you're walking on thin ice. I started adjusting myself, my expectations, my tone, my emotions. I laughed when I wanted reassurance. I said it's okay when it wasn't. I convinced myself that if I just stayed patient, he would eventually choose me fully. That was my second mistake. You should never have to earn love by shrinking. He had a way of being present without being committed. When we were together, he was attentive, warm, affectionate. He held me like I belonged there. He looked into my eyes and made me forget every doubt I had collected while waiting for him. But when we were apart, I disappeared. Hours turned into days without messages. Promises turned into excuses. I'd ask if everything was okay, and he'd say he was just busy, tired, overwhelmed, and I believed him. Because believing him hurt less than admitting the truth. He's just going through a phase. I told myself. He's afraid of getting hurt, I said to my friends. He shows love differently. I whispered into the dark. I defended him even when he wasn't there to defend me. That was my third mistake. When someone loves you, you don't have to explain their absence. The moment I started to break came quietly. One night, after waiting hours for a reply that never came, I realized something terrifying. I was lonely with him. I felt more anxious in this almost relationship than I ever had alone. My happiness depended on his attention, and my peace vanished the moment he pulled away. I asked myself a question I had been avoiding for months. If he loves me, why do I feel so unsure? Love doesn't leave you guessing. Love doesn't hide behind silence. Love doesn't make you feel like an option. Still, I wasn't ready to let go. Hope can survive even when evidence is screaming. I finally confronted him on a quiet evening. My heart was racing, my hands trembling, but my voice was steady. I told him how I felt: confused, insecure, afraid. I told him I needed clarity, consistency, something solid to stand on. He listened. He always listened. Then he sighed and said the words that changed everything. I care about you, he said, but I'm not in a place to give you what you want. It sounded gentle, honest, reasonable, and devastating. I asked him if he loved me. He hesitated for just a second too long. Then he looked away and said, I don't think I can love anyone right now. That was the truth, wrapped in kindness. But here is the part he didn't say out loud. He didn't love me. I walked away that night feeling hollow, like something had been removed from my chest. Not just him, but the future I had imagined, the trips we never planned, the conversations we never finished, the life that existed only in my mind. For weeks, I replayed everything, every message, every touch, every word. I wondered if I had asked for too much, if I had scared him, if I had been enough. Then one morning, exhausted by self-blame, I saw things clearly. He hadn't failed to love me because I was unlovable. He hadn't held back because I asked too much. He hadn't left because I wasn't enough. He simply didn't love me. And that truth, painful as it was, set me free. Healing didn't happen overnight. Some days were heavy, filled with memories that refused to fade. I missed his voice, his laugh, the way he made me feel when he was present. I missed the illusion. But slowly, something shifted. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped rewriting conversations in my head. I stopped waiting. I began to recognize myself again, the person I was before I measured my worth by someone else's attention. I remembered my laughter without anxiety, my sleep without overthinking, my days without doubt. I learned that love is not confusion disguised as mystery. Love is not inconsistency justified by fear. Love is not potential. Love is action. One day, I caught myself smiling for no reason. The kind of smile that comes from peace, not excitement. I realized I no longer wanted him to come back, not because he was a bad person, but because I finally understood what I deserved. I deserved someone who chose me without hesitation, someone who showed up without reminders, someone whose love didn't need interpretation. I deserved a love that felt safe. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, hear me now. He doesn't love you not because you're unworthy, but because he is unwilling or unable, and that has nothing to do with your value. Love should not feel like a puzzle you're constantly trying to solve. Love should not leave you crying at night and hopeful in the morning. Love should not make you beg for clarity. When someone loves you, you'll know, not because they say it once, but because they prove it every day. Let go of the idea of who he could be. Let go of the future that exists only in your imagination. Let go of the pain that comes from holding on. Because the moment you stop chasing love that doesn't choose you, you make space for the love that will. And one day, you'll look back at this story not with regret, but with gratitude. Gratitude that it ended. Gratitude that you survived. Gratitude that you learned the most important truth of all. Someone who truly loves you will never make you question it.